Hey everybody, Charles here. This episode is titled Rebuild Society After You Do the Dishes and is based on Rule 6 from 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. This rule, as stated by Dr. Peterson, is set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world, which I believe matches the sentiment of our episode title, Focus on Fixing Yourself Before You Fix the World, because an unfixed you can only make things worse. Enjoy the episode and send your questions or suggestions to mindfullymasculine@gmail.com. Welcome to the Mindfully Masculine podcast with Charles and Dan, where we take a conscious, holistic, and direct approach to relationships, mental health, and self-improvement. For additional content, visit our website at mindfullymasculine.com. And to interact with us, our guests, and your fellow listeners, join the Mindfully Masculine group on Facebook.
Good morning, Charles.
Good morning, Dan. How are you?
I'm well.
It's been a busy day. It's 9:30 and woke up at 5. And I had someone I thought was a friend talk me into the 75 hard challenge. And now I don't know. It's I'm going to do it, but man, it's a lot. The 2 workouts a day, 45-minute workouts a day is a lot. And the gallon of water is a lot. I don't even know which of those is worse. That's a lot of, like, gallon of water is a lot of water.
How much water do you think you're currently drinking?
I don't know, at least 7 or 8 ounces a day.
So another, I don't know if you've looked for any apps for tracking it. I use Waterlogged. It's kind of cool.
No, I didn't think of that.
You can take a little picture of your container, and then when you open up the app, you just hit the container and you set how many fluid ounces it is, and it will add it up during your day every time and you can use multiple containers if you're not always using the same cup, whatever. And then it gives you a nice little dopamine hit at the end when you achieve your little congratulations.
Yeah, no, I got
confetti and stuff.
I got one of the plastic gallon jugs with a nice handle on it, and it has the times of the day listed and the little motivational sayings. So that's Amazon's going to deliver that today.
Nice.
And I'll just fill it up first thing every morning and just drink and pee all day long.
That's great.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. And some of the things on the challenge, like sticking to a diet, that's not going to be the hard part for me. Avoiding alcohol, clearly, I'm a week away from 75 days into that anyway. So that's real easy. So yeah, I'm not too worried about those, taking a picture of myself every day. I probably won't remember to do that, but I paid $4.99 for the 75 hard app. So it'll remind me to do all this stuff too.
Great.
We'll see how it goes. But
I wish you luck with that.
I mean, there are some people who have had like very dramatic results from doing the 2.5 months on this program.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Like somebody dropped 100 pounds.
Well, I mean, if you're starting,
if
you're starting at 500, then
I was going to say, you got to have 100 pounds to lose.
Right.
I don't think I'll be dropping 100.
Yeah. It's just going to be headphones and a mic for the next podcast. You're going to be whittled away to nothing. Jesus. Yeah. So I want to do something new on the podcast I didn't ask you about beforehand, and I just wanted to throw this out. Yep. Yeah. I'm crazy and fun like that. Sometimes I ride the escalator without using the handrails too. So I wanted to start out this one at least and say, what's something you appreciate today?
Okay. Well, I did about 2.5 miles before we started this morning, just walking, not jogging. And my feet feel fine because I bought a pair of inexpensive but well-reviewed shoes off Amazon when last time I did Couch to 5K, so probably a year ago. And I wore them this morning, and they're comfortable, and I'm still wearing them. I mean, sometimes I'll kick my shoes off to do the podcast, but they're still on my feet and I don't really feel them. So I'm glad that I found a good, comfortable pair of running shoes.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
I mean, it's it's even more fantastic considering you didn't tell me we were going to do this, and I just had to come up with something. So whatever you're going to share, you've been ruminating on for probably the last week. So it better be so much better than mine.
Actually, I didn't think about it till this morning when I was, and what I want to say is, I appreciate your friendship. And basically because you opened me up to, yeah, that's right. Here I come with the sledgehammer. Yeah, no. And the reason is I thought about it, this morning because a lot of times I've got these grand ideas of doing things, especially when it comes to New Year's resolutions, and one of them is, I wanted to learn, to drive a boat and spend more time out on boats. And, on Saturday, you said, hey, let's go to Disney. Let's grab a boat. Let's rent it. And normally I would have been like, no, I had just got done running. I'm doing the Way Better app for, basically a 5K training. I just worked out in the morning. I lifted in the morning, and then I did a 2-mile run, and I had a dance class. That's right. I had a final dance class for Hustle. And then I ran. I was exhausted. I was like, I never would have done it, but you're like, oh, you want to do it? I'm like, all right, 2:00, let's go. And I did it. Loved it. Had a great time.
Wasn't that fun?
That was a lot of fun. And I'm a better person for it. So, I appreciate you pushing me a little bit out of my comfort zone, even though you didn't realize you were doing that. If you hadn't been there to suggest it, I wouldn't have gotten off on my ass to do it.
Well, thank you. And now I feel bad about giving you a hard time about coming up with something. I didn't know it was going to be all about me. Jeez.
See,
I take it back. No, I mean, my life over the last 6 months has changed in a ton of ways. And a big part of that is because you and I are hanging out so much more than we used to. So I'm thankful for that as well.
Yeah.
But let's pretend I didn't say that so I could just use that for next week.
Yeah.
Today's a big day for our podcast. Our episode with my therapist Renata got released this morning.
Yeah.
And she's very concerned that she has the biggest episode we've ever had, which I could really appreciate. We hit 1,500 downloads today, which I'm happy about too.
Congratulations to us.
Congratulations to us. We couldn't have done it without us. We'll see. Our little predictor metric is given all good news as well, and looks like people are getting something out of this thing we're putting out there.
Yeah,
and at least they keep listening to it and keep downloading it. So I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I'm super excited and grateful, and happy that people haven't just listened to it and then given up on it. So I'm enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it.
I mean, that said, with all 1,500 downloads that we have now, to be honest, I would give them all up for just 1,500 more.
Oh boy. Okay. So,
So, what's your week looking like? What do you got planned this week?
Let's see. This week, basically, I'm trying to think. This week, I'm going to be continuing to do my Way Better runs. They're going to be upping the mileage this week. So tomorrow or today, I have to do 1/2 mile, then 1.5 miles, another 1.5 miles, and then 2.5 miles this week. And then I've changed my workout routine so that I'm not lifting quite as much on the days that I'm running. I'm not working out. And
that seems like a good idea.
Yeah. I'd like to drop a couple of LBs myself. So I think on the days that I'm running, I'm gonna experiment with eating a little bit less, skipping breakfast, even though we've already talked about my issue with eating at night is related to probably not eating enough food in the morning, but I just don't have an appetite in the morning. So I'm not going to fight it anymore. I'm going to listen to my body. So the days that I'm not working out, I'm not going to eat breakfast. So I have it this morning. So if I'm face down in the book in a couple of minutes, just let me know.
But the whole not being hungry in the morning, isn't that a chicken and the egg thing where it's like, if you don't eat it all the night before, then you will be hungry in the morning?
Yeah, I'm losing that battle, my friend. I'm losing that not eating the night before. I don't know, man. So we'll see how this this plays out.
Yeah.
How
So
about you?
well, I was gonna say for my eating situations, so part of the 75 hard is to pick a diet and stick to it with no cheat days. And so that's what I'm doing. And the diet that I am doing is the one that basically works for me the best, that I've had the most success with over years now.
All sugar and all grain.
Exactly, all sugar, all grain, and all fat and all protein. So you gotta no yeah, it's the no sugar no grain diet that I got from this fitness trainer named Vinny Tortorich, and he's got a book called I think it's called Fitness Confidential, and it's kind of a biography plus his prescription for how to eat and how to exercise, to be healthy. And I picked up on him. He was on the Adam Carolla podcast years ago, back when I used to listen to that. And he just came across as a guy who absolutely believed in what he was saying and didn't mind pulling any punches to say it. And so I tried it when I was, probably pushing 215, and now I'm hanging out around 170, 175, and I just did what he said. Every day that I ate no sugar and no grain, and I got my 10,000 steps, I'd get on the scale the next morning, and I'd be a half pound lighter. Like every day that I did it, I dropped a half pound, and that it came out to a fairly. And I would do it 6 or 7 days a week. I'd stick to it, and so I would lose 3.5 pounds a week for like a long stretch of weeks, to the point where I ended up dropping about 40 pounds.
I'm sorry you had to go through that. Because you've been spoiled now. And you said to me the other day, you're expecting to lose like a pound a week or whatever. So the other day it was like 2 pounds a week or something. And I was like, dude, not at your weight. You're not going to do that.
I think I can do 1.5, 2 pounds a week.
If you don't eat at all, maybe. But that thing is, it's, that's the rub there. Is there's no easy delineation of understanding when your weight loss is going to slow down, because your body normalizes and it's like, okay, I'm close to where I want to be.
That's kind of the thing, right?
You're gonna have to work your ass off if you want to keep dropping weight.
The path is so gradual that you can't see that you're on the plateau until you're standing on the plateau, right?
Right. Yeah. No, that's absolutely right.
And so we'll see. I'm willing to. Look, 2 45-minute sessions a day, even if I just do a brisk walk for both of the 45-minute sessions, is a lot more activity than I'm doing currently.
Oh, yeah. I'm not saying you're not going to get any health benefits out of it, by any means, but just.
And look, you and I we've got pictures we got to take.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
We're starting to get a number of people listen to this podcast that, the methods that we're using to grow our audience aren't going to work forever. We're going to have to start doing crazy stuff, like putting our picture on the podcast artwork.
Whoa. I did not sign up for any of that.
Well, you got to get hot so we could, the camera adds 10 pounds. So I got to drop 10 pounds so I could just look like this.
Oh, all right. So should we get into rule 6?
No, it's too early. I still have things to say.
Oh, my bad. Excuse me. I'll go sit over here then. Yeah.
I've got. You
let me know when you're done.
I've got a dance lesson today that I'm looking forward to with Victoria.
Fantastic. What are you working on with her?
Splitting our time between East Coast swing, rumba, and probably going to start hitting the cha-cha now that I signed up for the group class.
Yeah, great.
So yeah, by the time this comes out, I'll be neck deep in that rumba class and that cha-cha class, assuming hopefully she gets enough people signed up that they both happen.
Yeah.
And then
cha-cha is definitely going to happen. I already saw the list. So cha-cha,
sweet.
Yeah,
okay.
that's 100%. Rumba, I don't know. Yeah. So
all right. So that's good. And then tomorrow I'll be driving over to the West Coast to work with one of my clients over there. Um, Wednesday is a fairly typical work from home day. Then Thursday, I'm going to go back to St. Petersburg to work. And Thursday night, I'm going to see Mark Norman. One of probably my favorite stand-up comic is in Tampa Thursday night.
Oh, that's
so I'm going to work over in St. Pete during the day and then go to Tampa to see him do a show at Side Splitters, which is my favorite comedy club with my favorite comic. And then Friday, Saturday, TBD, I suppose. We'll see. We'll see what's on the list. I think I might have something this weekend, but I don't remember what it is. But I definitely. No, it's not this week. It's next week that you and I are going to get back to our Wednesday evening happy hour schedule where we hang out and talk about our lives and talk about the podcast and drink some club soda and maybe eat some Parmesan truffle fries at Dexter's over in Lake Mary. That's kind of our favorite spot to hang out for a midweek debriefing.
Yeah, that's where the magic happened. That's where we started the.
That's right. That's where we came up with a lot of the ideas for the podcast at that bar, didn't we?
Yep. And I don't even know if we were drinking at that point. We may have been.
I think we were, but we definitely bought our first ad sitting at the bar there.
Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
And that worked out that blew our expectations out of the water. We got a lot more traction from that ad than we expected.
Yeah, I'm happy about that.
Yeah, me too. I was like, I can't believe you want to spend this much money, Dan. We don't even know if this is going to work. And you're like, we'll just spend it. Here's my credit card.
We don't know.
Then I remember texting Rob when I got home. And I was like, I think there's something wrong with Dan. He thinks this thing's going to be way better than it is.
Well, that remains to be seen, I guess, right? Well, I mean,
it's already way better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that's. Oh, like I said, you're a pessimistic optimist. I appreciate that.
I really am.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I guess that was it. You and I have we've secured our tickets for our St. Patrick's Day party that we're going to.
Yeah, that's gonna be great.
It's gonna be my first time visiting Lake Nona. I'm looking forward to that.
The place is awesome.
I've not been down there for anything yet. I've not even gotten off on that exit.
You're gonna want to move down there. I'm telling you.
You think so?
Yeah. If you have your place I don't know if they have a place for your camper, but
I think the real estate. Typically, the real estate in nice areas is too expensive to set up a campground.
Right.
So usually you're outside of town. I remember when I looked at the idea of moving to New York City, I was like, "Ooh, I wonder what the closest campground is." And I think Poughkeepsie is as close as you can get to New York City.
It was like Buffalo.
Yeah.
Got to keep people.
Now, I'm sure there's probably places in New Jersey that are closer than Poughkeepsie, but I don't want an NJ on the end of my address.
But getting across that river to New York, if you're in New Jersey, is a pain. I did that for many years as a consultant when I was living in New Jersey. I had to work in Manhattan, and whether you're taking a train, a car, or a boat, it was always just you tack on an hour to an hour and a half each way on your commute. And most of that was
even
because
for the train.
Yeah, because you know why? Because the train was inconsistent on their times. A lot of time, if you needed to be in the city by a certain period of time, you needed to take you needed to either take a much earlier train than you wanted to or needed to, because it's not like Europe where the rail system is like 2 minutes off at most, right? It's
okay.
I mean, it would be trains just wouldn't show up, or stuff would get stuck, in the Amtrak station getting into the tunnel, like right before you get into New York City. They just sit there. And then if you're on New Jersey Transit, you had to make way. If there's an Amtrak train running, they had to stop the New Jersey Transit train because Amtrak owned the tracks. And so you basically would have to sit and wait for that to pass. And so, the times were off by anywhere from 20 minutes to like 40 minutes on a regular basis. Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea.
But I'm not complaining.
Yeah. I mean, it's the capital of the free world. I mean, you gotta put up with some stuff to live up there. But I'm not feeling the desire to live in New York City anymore like I used to. I think heading west would probably drive me a little bit further than
based on how much you like to be, you like to hike and be outside in nature and stuff like that. You're just not going to get that, at least not in the city, or not in New York City anyway.
Right.
Yeah. And
upstate has some pretty nice areas though.
Right. I was going to say, yeah, but you don't need to live in the city for that and pay the exorbitant overpriced rent and food and transportation taxes and everything else.
I've emotionally just as I've gotten older, I've just kind of set these hard limits in my mind about here's what I'm willing to spend on a car, here's what I'm willing to spend on rent, here's what, and it's just like I don't see, like, my life is not going to be 10 times better by having a car that costs me 10 times as much money. So why would I do it? It's not going to be 10 times more fun to drive this car than it is to drive this car. Yep. And literally, I mean, there's some nice cars out there for $60, $70, $80, $90,000. And there's also some really fun cars out there for $6, $7, $8, $9,000. So it just, I can't see spending the money on stuff like that. And so, the idea of moving into Manhattan and, dropping $4,000 a month on rent, there's no way that would make my life worth it when I could spend that money on, Spirit airline trips around the globe.
Spirit's going international now, huh? Okay.
I was just looking at going down to maybe St. Thomas in the next couple months.
Ooh.
And $112 round trip from Orlando to St. Thomas.
That's fantastic.
I know. And once you get down there, I mean, there's obviously high-end resorts and stuff, but there's also other places where you still have a view of the ocean for $190 a night, where you're like on the ocean in St. Thomas. I mean,
what? All right. Yeah, we need to talk about this after the
corporate retreat.
Yeah, absolutely. Corporate retreat.
I'm down. Okay. Now I'm ready to, I've said everything I need to say, so we could get back into the book if you'd like.
Yeah, let's do that. So rule 6 is set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world.
Well, let's talk about that title. When he says set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world, he's essentially saying don't criticize the world, because your house is never going to be in perfect order.
Yeah. I mean, perfection doesn't exist to begin with.
Right.
Right. So, yeah. So,
but I understand I understand the tendency or the drive he's trying to address with this chapter very well, because there have been times in my life where I have felt pretty bad and I've thought, okay, I feel like crap. My life is a mess. Let me hop on Facebook and criticize the current administration's foreign policy. And then half of my friends will love me and think I'm super clever, and half of my friends will get mad at me, and then I'll at least feel something. So let me distract myself by trying to solve the world's problems, by not really trying to solve the world's problems. And it'll take my mind off of the fact that my own personal situation is pretty crappy right now.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's one of the 4 ways people try to escape life that he talks about from Tolstoy. He talks about that, which in this case, it's trying to find the like a pleasurable, you're losing yourself in pleasure. So in a weird way, because you're getting that dopamine hit, from that engagement on Facebook, right?
Yeah. Yeah, even when it's negative. I mean, even when you're getting into an argument with somebody and your tensions are rising and stuff, it's still like, let me get away from the fact that I'm not happy with my life right now. And I've taken a huge step back from, anything political on social media the last 6 months, because it's just like, man, I don't have the juice to actually try to make my life better and, focus on my mental and my physical health, and, try to put some level of effort into this podcast that people will appreciate and get something out of it. Try to, get everything done at work so that the people that I work with and work for will be happy with the service I'm delivering to them. It's like, I don't have the cycles to do all those things and also make sure everybody knows that I have an opinion on everything that's happening in the world.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's because you're getting some pleasure out of doing those other things, right? So you feel like,
well, even more important than that, I'm getting meaning out of doing those things.
Yeah, for sure. But I think, the through the process of doing them, there's still pleasure in that, right?
Right.
So yeah, overall, long-term meaning for sure. Yeah. But when you've got the meaning, and you've got, you're doing something for meaning, you can derive some pleasure in that. So if you don't have something like that in your life, that's something to think about, right? And then, like you said, it really kind of goes back to the title, which is, don't criticize the world, because you can't do anything about the world. You can do something about yourself. You can't do anything about the world.
And the only way you can do something about the world is to get your house in order, and the effects that will have. But it's like, yeah, if you try to go to work directly on fixing the world,
yeah,
how often does that work? It's like, no, go to work fixing yourself, and then put a fixed version of yourself out into the world, and that will make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
Because the unfixed version of you isn't making the world better, it's making it worse.
Yeah. What was a little bit the beginning of it was a little dark. He was talking about, the Columbine killers.
Dark.
Yeah.
Yes.
Columbine killers. And
Columbine, Sandy Hook, the Aurora theater shooting is like, man, he's hitting all the really bleak stuff.
Yeah. And what he quoted a couple of passages from their diary, basically, where they were saying that nothing means anything anymore, and that we should give the planet back to the animals, and all mankind should die. And and he makes a point where that basically these people are, and I thought about this, they're like the ultimate critics. They're determining what is best for everybody, and basically by saying, well, we're just going to end mankind because we think that the planet should be, would be better without it, and that, to me, that's the ultimate form of ignorant arrogance. And because everybody deals with and Peterson talks about that. Life is suffering. There's no avoiding disease and death and aging, right? That just doesn't, nobody can avoid any of that, right? So, and we all have different things that we deal with, and that we, that are suffer, so
yeah, to
think, to think that they're the only ones that have dealt with anything and are suffering, and just, I had a real problem with that, obviously.
Well, yeah, and I think I think that's a tendency we all have. Obviously, not to go into the realm of mass murder or anything, but basically the more you're suffering with whatever it is, anxiety, depression, a nihilistic worldview, the more you suffer, the more you can only look inward, and the more you sort of take your subjective experience and then just assume that applies to the whole world.
Yeah.
And so you just get so self-centered, and so the way I feel right now, this is the way the world is, because it becomes your world. So as as primates, we're not able to always keep that distinction of the difference between my world and the world. It's just it just feels like the world is terrible because right now I'm feeling terrible.
Yeah.
And when you don't have, in their case, when you don't have when you've got this terrible outlook on life and you're feeling terrible all the time, and I would assume whatever their family was trying to do, they were not intervening in any kind of an effective way. And plus, in the case of Columbine, these two deeply disturbed individuals found each other and then just fed off of each other and made it worse and worse and worse, which you could argue that goes back to the other chapter about selecting and finding good friends, because you don't want somebody who is just gonna help you down the spiral staircase over and over and over again, just keep feeding off each other, making each other worse and worse and worse, and more resentful and more angry and more depressed. And that seems to be what happened in their case.
Yeah.
It was, I told you this morning before we started recording, it was a bummer. While I was walking, this chapter on Audible is only about 29-30 minutes. And 25 of those minutes is just him talking about how terrible of a place the world is. And then, the last 5 minutes, he's like, yeah, and here's what you can do about it. But it's good stuff. It is good it does put the world into perspective about about why the world is a rough place, and why you may have this impulse of, I think I figured out what we can do to fix everything.
Yeah, I think
But
there's undertones there where of basically going into or thinking about the world as it should be perfect and it should be painless and it should be easy to live in, and if you walk about your work, go through life thinking that, it's going to be shocking when it isn't. Right. And that's when I think you might have a tendency to blame the world, because now you're like, well, this isn't the way the world is or should be. Whereas he presents the view of, world is, living is tough. Life is tough. The world is a rough place. And if you then walk through life thinking of it in that manner, it's not quite as shocking when something bad happens, or, and it also, I feel like, allows you then to go, okay, it is going to be tough and there's going to be a lot that I have to deal with. So I'm going to, if I want anything to feel good, if I want any kind of change, that's on me. I got to look at my own house, because, for things to be better than the default, which is not good. So to me, that's motivating and kind of changes the perspective and go, okay, look, I expect I'm going to have to do some work here, and I'm going to be less shocked when something bad does happen, and go, okay, look, it's just something I got to deal with. And so reading that just helped me realize why I'm attracted to personal development, and why I think a lot of people are as well. And getting excited when we have more information to help us deal with the world. And yeah, that's something I took away from this.
Yeah, one of the parts of this chapter that really resonated with me was when he talks about the play The Cocktail Party by T.S. Eliot, and how one of the characters is not having a good life, and she goes to a psychiatrist, and she says to the psychiatrist that she hopes all of her suffering is her fault.
Yeah.
And the psychiatrist is like confused by it, and she says, look, if it's all my fault, then I can do something about it, but if it's just God or the world, then I'm screwed. And that's kind of how I feel too. It's like, I want to take responsibility for things that are not going well to be my fault, because if they're my fault, then I can do something about it. Where if they're not my fault, then I gotta believe that I just got a bad number on the roulette wheel, and maybe the next number will be better, maybe it'll be worse, but I'm just along for the ride. No thanks.
Right. Yeah. No, again, that personal responsibility.
That makes me feel the other thing that's kind of related to that is when he talks about how and this resonates with my early upbringing, in my education, all about how the Hebrews or the Israelites were perpetually in this cycle in the Old Testament of, they would, a prophet would tell them, hey, you guys are messing up, you're doing the wrong thing. And they would be like, yeah, you're right, we are. We'll repent from it, and we'll get our country back on the right path again. And then they'll forget about it, and they'll start making bad decisions, and they'll bring in, foreign gods and stuff like that. And then they'll get conquered, and, half the population will get carted away. And then another prophet will come up and say, yeah, you guys deserve this. You did it to yourselves. And they're like, yeah, you're right, we did. And then they'll repent, and then they'll get straightened out again. And then the cycle was just constantly ongoing. But at least they always said, most of the time, I mean, I think in every case, until the final, Rome pretty much, sacked everything. But their attitude was, yeah, this is on us. We keep making this mistake. It was our fault. And I'm glad I'm 25% Jewish, because I feel like I've got that vibe of, yeah, this is my fault. I need to get this in order. Because if I was completely Italian, I would just assume I'm cursed or some crazy thing that us Italians like to believe. Or at least the quarter Jew in me says, yeah, you had this coming. This is your fault.
Oh my gosh. So yeah, the thing that kind of helped me, that I liked, was, a lot of times, starts out with this doom and gloom, but then, he kind of reinvigorates my faith in humanity. In the end, he mentions that a lot of times, people look at, children who were abused growing up. And,
Oh, yes.
and
Yes.
people think, or at least I did until I heard this chapter, that, people who abuse, children who get abused, grow up to become abusers. And while that is, that can be true, the actual opposite is, for the most part, what is true is the children who are abused do not grow up to be abusers. And he basically breaks it down, into a math problem. He says, okay, look, you say you have, 3 children of a woman who abused them, and each of them have been abused, and you assume then if everybody's going to abuse her, then, the next generation, they each have 3 children. There's going to be 9. And then, right, within 20 generations, he said there's going to be like 10 billion people that are abusers. And that's not the case. And so what he's basically saying is we can learn from both being abused and being exposed to evil things as well as good things. And a lot of people, and they look at themselves and they say, okay, I've been abused. I never want to do this again. I want to actively not, I want to be a good person. And it really, speaks to the testament of the human heart wanting good over evil, because they're actively choosing the good over the evil. If that wasn't the case, then we'd be, people would be abusing each other, all over the place. And that's not the case. And I was just like, wow, you can't dispute the logic, based on simple math, actually. And it, it was kind of reassuring.
Not to be a jerk, but allow me to dispute the logic.
Please do.
What if a portion of those people who were abused are so badly abused that they either decide not to reproduce, or they're unable to find a mate to reproduce with because their social behavior has been so impacted? So this idea that everybody's just going to grow up and make 3 children does not take into account the effect of the abuse might be so bad that the DNA ends with that abused child because they don't go on to reproduce.
Yeah, no, and absolutely that's
so
possible.
I thought,
sure. I'm sure
I liked what he was saying on the first reading, but then I thought, okay, this is a little oversimplistic.
Yeah, but here's how many of those people do you think, so even if we go with that, which is absolutely probably the case with some people that've been abused so badly they don't reproduce.
Right. But the other side of it, some of them say, I'm just going to have 8 or 9 kids.
Right. So you have no idea, right? So there absolutely is possibility in both ways. But I think it doesn't take away from his overall point, is that we'd have a lot more people who are abusive if this is something that we wanted in terms of being a human being. If this is something that we valued, everybody would be abusers, and everybody would be committing these horrible,
Yeah, I do agree with his point to say, just because that happens to you when you're a kid, you're not locked into then passing it down to this next generation. Certainly not locked into it at all. And I suppose there probably is a very small group of people who experience no abuse whatsoever as a child, but then they grow up to be abusers themselves.
Sure.
Which seems very unlikely. But I guess, you could make the argument that there might be some sort of a biological only component of an abusive mindset that you could, be completely cared for properly as a child, but then still grow up to become an abuser.
Again, I think that percentage is so small.
Yeah. Outliers for sure. Like way out.
Yeah. But the message that I take away from that is that, you can either, learn from your past or not. And you can learn from really any experience that you have, good or bad. There's something you can learn from and take away. So again, that means, though, if you're willing to learn, you got to look at yourself, and you can't be looking to, you got to care enough to look at yourself and say, hey, what did I go through? And, how am I going to behave based on this, rather than looking outside yourself and saying, yeah, I'm, the world sucks, so I'm not going to do anything.
Yeah, one of the things that I found the most encouraging in this chapter was the message of, if you want to make yourself better and you want to make the world a better place, the most valuable thing you can do is stop the behavior that's making it worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's no huge grand gesture or there's no giant mountain you have to climb to start moving in the right direction. To start moving in the right direction, the biggest impact you're going to have on yourself and the people around you is stop doing the things that you're doing that is making the world a worse place. And it's like, wow, that's we say it that way. That sounds kind of easy. Like, and you don't even have to stop all of the things you're doing to make the world worse right now. You just have to pick one thing. You know, what's the smallest thing that you can stop, that you will stop, that will make the world a better place, right?
And we've got wisdom that we can't comprehend. And that goes into something that I've always been talking about, that I've been fascinated about. Once I heard that we've got brain cells that line our gut and our heart, similar types of brain cells that we have. And I mean, not just a few. I mean, there's like 30, 40,000 of them. So that when you feel something in your gut, but you can't explain it in your brain, those primitive cells are detecting something from an experience and giving you information. And you know, we're not totally aware of that. And it just goes to show the complexity of the human body and how brilliant and how ignorant we are of it. And to not, you know, when they say trust your gut, yeah, it's a little bit of a leap of faith because we can't explain it. We don't, you know, it's difficult to explain.
Yeah,
I just love that whole concept though.
Yeah, I do too. And I had heard this before, and I just while you're talking just now, I just Googled to make sure that it's true. The human gut, basically, you know, your abdominal area has 500 million neurons, which is roughly the same amount that a dog's brain has.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that many. That's insane.
So you have, you know, information processing capability of just your chest and abdomen is equal to that's in the head of a dog. And there's some pretty smart dogs. Look at Lassie.
Yeah.
my gut's as smart as Lassie.
You know, what's interesting is, you know, and we don't realize how it actually will show and manifest on ourselves. So for example, if you love animals, you love dogs or cats, whatever, and you see you know, a strange cat or dog that you've never met before, but you get this little bit of joy, this little bit of happiness that, and a lot of times for me, when I see a dog, I get excited and stuff, and that comes from my gut. And it probably, I probably smile and everything else like that. But because of that, I feel like animals, you know, are attracted to me, and they you know, they're receptive to me, and they're very friendly. And, you know, and even when, you know, I see them from across the street, a lot of times, I mean, that may not, you know, I might be, you know, totally imagining things, may have nothing to do with me, but I feel like I'm giving off an energy that, you know, and it originates from my gut saying, hey, you know, I like this animal, I like this being, and somehow it's being shown, you know, to that animal, and they respond, you know, accordingly. You know, and, you know, I've been, you know, around a few animals and stuff like that, where people are like, oh, they don't normally like anybody, but they seem to like you.
Well, and that's the thing about animals, especially dogs and cats. You know, they don't have the capabilities that humans have, but they also aren't tricked into believing what people say to them instead of how people act. And so they've evolved to understand nonverbal communication at a level that humans have left behind thousands and thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's the nonverbals that they get from people that determine how they react to those people.
Yeah. You know, I actually saw special, they did a study where they measured the brain, or not the brain, but the eye activity and probably the brain of dogs. And what they found was that dogs will often look at the left side of the human's face to determine how to react to that human being. And so apparently, like, all of our micro expressions and everything else like that, you know, they and it's the left side. They looked at all these different dogs, and their eyes always went to the left side of the human's face.
Interesting.
Yeah. And
so those micro expressions are more pronounced on our left than our right.
Maybe,
is that the conclusion?
I don't know, or maybe the ones that they need to respond to, whether it's anger or
interesting, or
fear or love. They didn't really get into that.
Yeah, but I'd be curious to know more about that. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and immediately, that's like the first thing they you know, their eyes, when they engage with a human being, a face, you know, they'd measure it immediately, always to the left.
Let me do a little bit of reading as well, because there is a couple sentences here that resonated with me, and I want to share those and then give you some thoughts on them. This is on the bottom of page 158. Don't reorganize the state until you have ordered your own experience. Have some humility. If you cannot bring peace to your household, how dare you try to rule a city? Let your own soul guide you. Watch what happens over the days and weeks. When you are at work, you will begin to say what you really think. You will start to tell your wife or your husband or your children or your parents what you really want and need. So I love the idea that he ties together real self-improvement with the ability to share your needs with the people around you. And so I thought, man, what a great metric. Am I really getting better? Am I really improving on myself? Let me ask myself this question. Am I honestly sharing with people what I want and what I need in a way that I wasn't doing it before? And if the answer is yes, then you're getting better.
And he mentions it's a simpler, less stressful life to do it that way. And as I've gotten older and as I've been more comfortable doing those things, I definitely feel that way. It adds a lot less complications and complexity and stress when, initially though, it's going to be uncomfortable. If you don't come from a place, if you're not used to expressing your needs and the truth and being completely honest and forthright, it's uncomfortable and your brain just goes nuts. And it's just like, oh my God, it kind of goes back to no more Mr. Nice Guy. I'm going to be at risk for, potentially being ostracized from the group, or this person's not going to love me anymore, or, and as you do it more and more and more, you realize that that's less and less likely to happen. And the rewards, then you realize the reward is definitely worth the risk at the beginning to say those things, to be that completely open and honest.
It's that easy, that early, ineffective, coping mechanism or defense strategy, whatever you want to call it, of the idea of, clearly the world has no interest in meeting my needs. So I've got to figure out ways to trick the world into meeting my needs so they don't know that they're meeting my needs. And that, that is definitely part of the nice guy mentality that I'd been saddled with for a very long time. Like, oh, thank God I was born smart enough that I can trick the world into meeting my needs, because, if I'm honest about them, nobody's going to have any interest. So I got to figure out ways to trick people into giving me what I need. That does not include me just saying, it's giving me a lot of anxiety when you're doing X, Y, or Z. Can we talk about maybe you not doing that anymore? Or can we talk about how I can deal with that? No, I would never have that conversation.
Yeah. And I think thinking through this as you were talking about it, I think maybe part of the problem is when we're talking about needs, right? I know I had a tendency, or have a tendency, to think that if the needs don't get met, then there's going to be a problem too. So then it's kind of like an all or nothing. Well, and then
the biggest problem, I mean, I'm not your brain is wired to, your brain is wired to say, if the need's not met, I'm going to die.
Yeah. And then we really have to overcome that and go, look, if the need isn't met in this capacity, I'm not going to die. I'm going to be okay. Now, again, within, talking about, modern, first world, kind of problems,
right, exactly,
and needs and things like that. Right. Okay.
Yeah. We're not talking about drinking water
or right. Yeah. Or food or something like that. Right. Right. It's respecting me when I say, I have work to do, and not constantly calling me all the time, trying to, and then being upset,
Okay. I'm sorry, Dan, enough.
Right. Yes.
I get it.
Didn't mean to call you out in the middle of a podcast, but okay. If you're going to put me on stage, you're going to give me the platform, I might as well. Right. So yeah. And thinking through it, as you were saying, is like, I think we might also, by using the word need also, we might, add too much importance to it. And there's definitely a difference between a need in terms of, having time to do work, and a need to be able to drink clean water. Right. And so one really is a life or death thing, and another, but our brain really doesn't, know much of a difference unless we, our primitive brain doesn't anyway. And we have to really think through those things and go, okay, so, if Charles, says, no, I'm going to continue to bother you while you're at work and stuff like that, and text you and everything else like that, and doesn't, that I'm going to be still okay, or, it's not going to be a big deal for me to have to enforce that boundary and go, well, Charles, then we're not going to hang out anymore, man. We're just not going to do the podcast together anymore, and,
Right.
and so, and that's, again, not the end of the world. Right. But you have to think through those things. And, we're having that time and space to be able to think through those things is something we have to consciously make and put into our own schedules, considering most people can easily have their time and attention taken up by everything around us, from social media to friends and family to, work obligations and everything else like that. So, just, I think giving us that time and space to do things, to think through those is really important. And I actually did that this weekend. I actually decided I was going to do every other Sunday is just going to be my day. And I'm going to just spend time by myself and organize my week, organize the house, organize my brain, and just spend time by myself. And that I did that yesterday, and I feel so much more calm and settled and peaceful today by doing that. So
that's awesome.
So that was something I'm putting in my calendar every other weekend on a Sunday. That's my time the whole day.
I like that. And obviously, since I don't hang out with anyone but you, so now by default, it's my plan too. One of the things I was thinking of, when it does come to the point where someone else shares an unmet need with you, it's important to say, okay, look, if I'm in a relationship with this person, the nature of which has them comfortable enough to say, hey, this is something that I need and I'm not getting it right now. As the hearer of that, it's your job to sort of jump in and say, okay, a problem has been brought up, and now me and the person who brought it up, we're on a team together to solve this problem. And so now it's time to start doing some digging and get the information you need to get about the need. How severe is it? How quickly do we have to work on it? What exactly does the boundary that this person's setting look like? What are the consequences? And not doing it in any kind of a defensive or an adversarial way, but approaching it like, all right, there's a problem. I've just been clued in on a problem that we both get to work together to solve. And so what are the questions I need to ask? What do I need to understand about this need that I don't currently understand, so that we can both work together to get to the bottom of how it can be met? Or in some cases, how can we come to the conclusion of there's nothing I can do to help you meet this need, so now we need to take it to the next step to figure out what we do about that?
Yeah. That's absolutely a great approach. My last partner kind of presented things to me that way, in terms of, it's not about who wins and who's right when it comes to an argument. It's about, what can we do? What is the issue, like you said, and how can we, let's attack the issue, not each other.
You and me versus the problem.
Right. Yeah. And sometimes in order to get to that state, you need some, again, the whole time and space. Sometimes if it's a very, could be a triggering issue. It could be, a lot of emotions involved. I know I've needed to walk away and, take hours or a day or two or whatever to really clear my head and get my thoughts in line and be able to separate that out and let the emotions be there. And that's one thing I've learned as well is, you're not going to be able to do away with your emotions, but it's like how you handle them. Right. And so if that means, you're feeling things, and you're angry and everything else like that, give yourself that space to let them be there. And then, once they're not going to be there forever, they will change. Everything's a little temporary. And then that'll give you the time and space to then think through some stuff. And that's helped me for sure. But yeah, to pretend that, the anger doesn't exist, or that the frustration, or that, being upset or sad, or you shouldn't feel that way, that's not a right good way to go about it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. In revisiting No More Mr. Nice Guy again and going through it with a little bit more of an eye directed inward, it's like, yeah, when your partner tells you that they have an unmet need and you're walking around with a certain base level of fear, shame, anxiety, then just that conversation is going to feel like an attack, and you're going to get defensive and you're going to go into survival mode of, okay, how can I make their unmet need all about me and how I'm not going to be able to survive hearing that my partner has a need that I'm not meeting. And now it's time to go to war against them, not the problem.
Yeah.
And the only way to do something about that and have any kind of a positive change is you've got to address that base level of fear, shame, and anxiety that you're walking around with. And that's not easy to do, but you got to turn the thermostat down on those things below the surface. Otherwise, you're just waiting for the boiler to overload and spring a leak.
Yeah. And I mean, and a lot of times if it means you doing something differently, our brains don't want to do different things, right? We want to get in a routine. We want to be efficient when it comes to our energy. And that also includes thinking through ideas and stuff like that, because our brain uses a whole lot of energy too. So, it's not just our body. So, our default is to minimize the amount of extra work that we have to do. And so the thought of having to do extra work already is sometimes, oh God, now I have to, add this to my list of all the other things that I'm dealing with life. And
that was one of the things I heard. I heard Dr. Glover say in a podcast interview. And it was a little bit of a bummer to hear him say it, but he was being honest, and he's got a lot of experience, dealing with men who have some of these problems. And he said, in my experience, people, especially men, almost always choose their defense strategies over love. It's like, geez, man, that's a bummer.
But I think, knowing that we have a tendency, again, just that awareness, right? Knowing we have a tendency to possibly lean in that direction initially, I think, kind of can help us keep our eye out for it and do something about it.
And that's, something huge I learned from the work of Brene Brown, which is the more you talk about the fact that you feel shame, and I would say that would apply to every, quote unquote, negative emotion. I feel. Welcome back, Dan. Should we address that we stopped and then started again, or should we keep that a secret?
Shh.
Yeah, we
my 11-year-old computer would prefer that you keep that a secret.
Yeah, we have computer troubles too, folks, even though we are supremely talented technology professionals. We have like better things to spend our money on than new computers that work.
Right. It's like the shoemaker's kids, right? They don't
exactly
got no shoes.
Like all the things that I constantly tell my customers not to do. Keep using your equipment until it dies, and then we'll replace it. Like, no, we should have a proactive plan to replace stuff every 5 years, whether it breaks or not. Yeah, but I want to go to Hawaii this year, so I'm just going to hope the computer keeps running, and then when it dies with all my data on it, then I'll replace it. Yeah, do as we say, don't do as we do, right?
Correct. Yes. Ignore everything we say on this podcast.
That's good advice.
Yes.
So the thing I was starting to talk about was the work of Brene Brown, who she seems to do a lot of work in leadership, but specifically she likes to talk about shame a lot, and one of the things that she recommends is, or not really recommends, but one of her observations based on all of her clinical work is that when you have feelings of shame and you start talking about them, that's like the most effective way to make those feelings go away. When you're willing to open up and say, I experience feelings of shame, I feel ashamed about X, Y, or Z, then that shame has like no control or power over you anymore, because it requires darkness. And so when you start talking about it, You take away the power. And I would argue that's the same with depression and anxiety and fear, and really, every negative mental health condition that you can go through.
Yeah.
It's not going to be made worse. It's only going to be made better when you share it with safe people or with a podcast audience.
Different strokes for different folks.
Yeah. So that was one of the things that, and I don't remember why I wanted to talk about Brene Brown. I'm sure it'll be completely clear when you listen to the whole podcast, smushed together, part 1 and part 2. But I can't remember why I was going to bring it up, but I'm sure it was really important. Before Dan's computer froze up, and I just kept talking and talking and talking, and Dan's face was just frozen, staring at me. I was like, man, he's really into what I'm saying. So I just kept going until you messaged me from your phone to say my computer just blue screened. I was like, oh man,
sorry, you're just not that interesting.
Yeah, it's I've had that conversation with people before when a cell phone call drops, and I'm still talking to them, and then they call me back.
And in the back of your mind, are you thinking, "Wow, I'm really killing it here." Exactly. I mean, they're utterly engaged. They're
utterly transfixed by what I'm saying right now.
They can't think of anything on their own because they're just so mesmerized by the words coming out of my hole.
Yes, and would a lesser man wait for a or an uh-huh? Maybe, but not me.
Just steamroll right through.
Yeah, I mean, not even the not even the requisite. Oh, that's crazy.
If I remember correctly, you're starting to talk a little bit about vulnerability, which is really what she's known for as well, right? And I think that was the point that you were going down, which is by labeling that and other emotions, you do take away some of their power. You provide a little bit of that space. You are stepping outside of the feeling at that point by being able to by mentally labeling it and talking about it. It's pulling you out of it, and it's allowing some of those physical feelings to step aside because your other part of your brain is focusing on something else, and that's identifying what it is.
Yeah, and I wonder if that impact and that effect is the same if you are able to step away from yourself when you're experiencing something enjoyable with someone. Like, do you say, man, I'm really enjoying the conversation we're having right now, or I'm having a good time right now? What does that do to the tenor of the conversation? I guess you got to be careful who you do it with, and you got to make sure that you're doing it sincerely, because I feel like that could be a little too much for some audiences. If you're just getting to know somebody or you're not that close with them, letting that stuff air out, both the positive and the negative, could feel a little overwhelming to people if you're not inside of a relationship where it makes sense to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What's interesting is there a difference between identifying it and calling and labeling it at the moment that you're actually engaging in it versus like a couple hours later or the next day you go, oh, I really had a great time with you, or I really enjoyed the conversation. I think there's a difference. Initially, as I'm thinking through this, I think
you're
right.
And I think there's a big difference with positive emotions and negative emotions too.
Mm-hmm.
Where when you're experiencing it on the negative side, maybe it's not the same. Maybe when you stop and label what you're feeling, it interrupts the feeling. So you don't want to do it when it's positive, but you do want to do it when it's negative.
I was just going to say that's what I'm thinking as well. Right? Yeah, you're going to put a quick end to that the good time when you're going, hey, let's analyze what we're doing right now. And now it's kind of cold and like you're not in the moment anymore.
Which is a good thing when things are not going well, but a bad thing when they are.
Yeah,
maybe a bad thing. I don't know.
Bad thing, but or
I'm gonna have to think about that a little bit more.
Right. I mean, that's the thing is, the feeling of the feelings, is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? I mean, I guess that's the question, right? I think the answer is what you just said is, yeah, you're gonna cut off the feelings of it, and so what's your
maybe
aim?
You're not. I mean, if you're having a great date night with somebody that you're in love with, and they're in love with you, I could see a way that it would enhance things to say that. But, if you're on a first date with somebody and you tell them, I just need to stop real quick to say how amazing this time is, they're going to be like, what's wrong with you right now?
Right. So here's the thing. My point is if you are vibing with somebody and having a great time, I think part of it is you don't need to say it. You both feel it and you both are just there. And I feel like if you, in my experience,
you're right.
if
the
I were to
nonverbal communication
label it,
should win.
right. And to me, that's a little bit more of a deeper connection, because then we're connecting on a less of a conscious
I agree with you. Yeah.
level, right? It's more of a part of our brain that's been with us for thousands of years. And I feel like that's like that deeper connection. And when we start bringing in that pesky prefrontal cortex part of our brain into that equation, that's when things go a little wonky, right? I mean, a lot of times in life when we let our thoughts ruminate too much with that evolved part of our brain,
right,
we end up driving ourselves a little crazy.
And the other person feels like they're being sold something.
Oh, in what way? Help me understand when you say that. Explain that.
I mean, I guess the idea of we need to take a step out of the natural interaction we're having right now, so that the front part of my brain can label it and talk about it and get the cognitive wheel spinning instead of just feeling what we're in.
Mm-hmm.
I think the other person can be like, okay, and what's this leading to?
Right. Yeah. Why did you do this?
Preparing me for?
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Why can't we just continue to feel what we're feeling? Yeah.
That's interesting.
All
right. Try some of this out on your next date, Dan, and let me know how it goes.
I will. I'm just going to label everything.
Right before your date is about to roll the bowling ball down toward the pins, be like, wait, stop. I've got something I need to say. This is a really special experience. I'm really enjoying
watching you swing that ball, right?
And eating these bowling alley French fries right after taking my finger out of this rented bowling ball. I never did the math on that when I was a kid, how we would be bowling with these disgusting bowling balls and then walk you right back to the table and shoving food in our face.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing we weren't sick all the time from that, right?
Yeah, that's why we're strong now, Dan.
That's right, Bill. We fortified our immune system by testing it constantly.
Modern bro germ theory, right there.
Yeah, that and all the spittle on the top of birthday cakes that we used to eat from people blowing out the candles. Can you imagine? I mean,
I'm glad COVID killed that. That's done, right? That's never coming back.
I don't know.
It's gonna be. I think from now on, people put a candle on a cupcake, you blow that out, and then after that little ritual's done, then you bring out the sheet cake from Publix and you chop it into pieces.
Oh, that's how they're doing it these days. I haven't been invited.
I think
to
that's
a
how they're
birthday
doing it
party
now
in a long time. Yeah.
That's so okay now. All right, so we're hitting 88 minutes, but I'm not sure how much of that we lost.
Yeah. So why don't we wrap it up? I think we thoroughly addressed the putting your house in perfect order before criticizing the world. Anything else?
The next one's a rough one. Rule 7: pursue what's meaningful, not what is expedient. And boy, it's a long one. So why
don't we just skip that one? That'd be much more expedient. Just skip it.
Let's skip to the one about petting cats in the street. The subject I have my honorary doctorate on. All right, Dan, we'll have a great rest of your Monday, and I'm sure I'll talk to you again real soon.
Sounds good, man. Talk to you soon.
Take it easy. All right, bye. Thanks so much for spending time with us on the Mindfully Masculine podcast. If you liked the episode, or you think it would be useful for someone else, please leave us a review and join the Mindfully Masculine group on Facebook. Remember, fellas, don't act masculine. Be masculine.